the latest news about a fighter jet being shot in Iran, being down in Iran. And first, what was the reaction from the CENTCOM? They said that nothing of that sort has happened. And the footages, the pictures coming out of Iran from the mainstream media, from the Iranian media. Then we have new reports coming to CNN, to New York Times. And here is what CNN reported on that.
Media has released images that appear to show debris of a downed US fighter jet, saying the fate of the pilot is unknown. Well, Matthew Chance is in Doha, covering off some of this latest. Matthew, let's start with what we know about this downed jet in Iran. State media certainly saying it's a US F-35. We've seen the images that they've posted. What do we make of those?
Yeah, it wasn't F-35. We had initial reports that they said F-35, then they changed it to F-15E. Colonel, what is your understanding? What was that, in your opinion? What type of fighter jet was that?
Well, I couldn't tell from the photos, but I think the latest reports are manifest. New York Times, across YouTube, F-15E. And that would make, I don't know that it makes any more sense. We already had F-15 shot down by Kuwait. I was kind of expecting that we would be awakened to an to a B-52 being shot down because they're such lumbering colossuses. They have a lot of additional security, if you will, than they had in the old days when they bombed Vietnam to a pulp. But I was kind of thinking that would happen. F-15E is usually a pretty decent aircraft, so it must have strayed. It must have had maintenance malfunction, or it got in a place where it shouldn't have been, envelope of a particular Iranian system where it shouldn't have been. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But it's going to happen, and it's going to happen again, as long as we keep this idiotic conflict going on.
Yeah. Larry, they're trying to find the pilot. Go ahead, your take.
Well, yeah, I've got one of my readers, who's also one of your viewers, just sent me a note saying that, hey, the pilot has been captured, and I've seen the footage just before we came on of a Black Hawk was smoking out. I mean, it had been hit, and so apparently a Black Hawk has now gone down in Iran as well.
CSAR, probably.
Yeah. So now you got the nightmare for Donald Trump is beginning to unfold in its full glory, because remember, they've defeated Iran. Iran doesn't have any air defense. They've wiped out their air force. They've wiped out their navy. Iran has nothing left. And now they've shot down an F-15 and shot down a Black Hawk helicopter, and they've got a pilot. And we'll see if they also grab the crew, if there's any surviving crew from the Black Hawk. So now you're going to see, you'll get images of a U.S. pilot in Iranian hands, and it's just a reminder that Trump's narrative about the complete defeat of Iran is not working out so well.
I'm sure you're going to go into this too, Neiman, but since I have abbreviated time, I make sure you're going to go into it. You've seen the reports on what has resulted from Trump's very impolitic comments about MBS. Well, we have a whole new relationship now developed in the region, a relationship between Zelensky, who is very, very quick to jump on it, and MBS. And the statements I've heard come out of the royals in Saudi Arabia indicate that this is a final relationship with regard to their succor from the United States of America. There will be no more.
Yeah. Larry, when you look at the way that I happen to know the region in which the fighter jet was shot.
What was it? What region was it?
It's in southeast of Iran.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I am from that region. I know the region. I know the people. I know well the people. They're mostly armed. They know how to use, a rifle, for example. But they don't. I know that they're so much cautious. They know, since they know well how to use arm, they know how to manage that. They're not gonna. If they capture the pilot, they're not gonna do any hurt. They're not gonna hurt him. I'm sure about that. And on the other hand, Colonel, Larry, when they send these sort of, we've seen various helicopters there,
Yeah.
and is that common? Is that it's
Yeah.
so strange to?
Yeah, it's called CSAR, Combat Search and Rescue. This goes back a good friend of mine. He was the last colonel to command the Air Force Special Operations Wing out of Hurlburt before they made it into a one-star billet. But he flew helicopters in Vietnam and the rescue copters. And inevitably, like in Vietnam, what would happen, a pilot would get shut down and they'd send out the CSAR. And the number of times those rescue helicopters and got shot down was, it was fairly numerous. You actually got more casualties out of that than you did from pilots that were, shot down. So they've had, there have been, I don't know where they're staging out of, if it's out of Qatar or Prince Saud Air Base. But, when the pilot went down, they went in to try to rescue him. And apparently, if what this one person is sharing with me, at least one of those choppers got shot down.
Yeah. Colonel Pete Hegseth, on the other hand, is firing important commanders in the middle of this war. What are they trying to do in the United States? We had reports from the Intercept that they're just somehow, they're not reporting correctly on the number of casualties. The way that they're talking about, they have destroyed Iranian capabilities to fire back. CNN reported on that. What is happening under Pete Hegseth and his sort of management in Pentagon?
Well, my initial reaction to Randy George's release was that it probably was war related. And it very well may have had that as a component of it. But what I'm hearing now very strongly from friends is that he was absolutely incensed over Hegseth's dipping into the Brigadier General's list and removing the 2 women, I think, and 2 black officers. And he was so incensed over it that Hegseth let him go. He really got vocal with him over it, that he shouldn't do that. He couldn't do that it was unprecedented, blah, 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 blah. And then I heard that the chief of chaplains was released because of somewhat of the war, interest about the war or opposition to the war and the way it was being conducted. But that was mostly personnel-wise too, is what Hegseth was doing to the chaplain corps. Everything from taking their rank insignia off to eliminating whole groups. And this is really strange. He's eliminating whole groups of people who can be represented by chaplains in an official way within the military. And all of these groups that he's eliminating are officially recognized by Arlington Cemetery as being able to have their symbol on their tombstone should they die and go into Arlington. This is crazy. He's flying against tradition, he's flying against protocol, and he's actually flying against regulation, but he's changing the regulations apparently. So a lot of this was personnel oriented more so than it was war, but I'm sure there was a huge component of that too. The personnel issues probably were just a straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, let me just point out what we're seeing here is I'll call it the politicization of the military, turning the military into a Praetorian Guard as opposed to the legionnaires. Within the Roman system, the legionnaires were there to fight for Rome. They fought for the nation. The Praetorian Guard was there to protect a particular politician. And In this case, and it started under, really started in earnest under Barack Obama, continued under Biden, and Trump, continuing under Trump, where you're trying to remake the leadership into partisan political supporters, and identifying people who aren't your supporters as people who must be eliminated. I mean, it's very, very dangerous, because this is just crossing a line that is it's gonna destroy the military, I believe.
You remember my saying, Neiman, I agree, 100% with Larry, and I would even go further. You remember my saying earlier that the January 6th coup didn't fail because the system fell. It fell because the coup plotters were incompetent. And one of the major aspects of their incompetence, if not the chief major factor, is the fact they didn't have the military on their side. Milley chose to stand aside. Not only chose to stand aside, but afterwards made very clear to the military why he stood aside and why he thought he was right, and was resoundingly welcomed in the military, particularly in the middle ranks. So I think they're shaping, and I think Larry's right about this, I think they're shaping this Praetorian Guard much more so than any previous administration, because they're shaping it to make sure that the Trump legacy, in whatever form, fashion, the MAGA legacy, whatever, is protected, even to the point that if they have to take over the Republic in some violent way, they will have the majority of the military on their side. And what they're doing right now is setting up a two-part military. So you would look for a battle within the military ranks before there would be any succumbing to a civilian order to more or less suppress a rebellion in the United States, or implement the Insurrection Act, or God forbid, go far beyond that even. I think they're prepping for this. And I said to one person this morning, I thought Hegseth would go, and I said he would probably be the first one to go. Bondi's gone, Noam's gone. I think a couple of others are short-lived. Hegseth is here, and I understand why he's here now, because he's crafting the instrument of Trump's legacy in retention of power. Can't let that go. Can't let nobody else is going to take that over probably and move in the direction and with the speed that Hegseth has moved.
It seems that Kash Patel, they're talking about Kash Patel as well. Yeah. The whole system is somehow shaking, Larry. Is that because of the war? Is that because of something beyond that?
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead. You're on a short leash anyway.
Larry,
I took Larry to meet. I'm getting shell shocked.
Oh, okay. This is my understanding, without revealing the source, is that Susie Wiles is alarmed now, finally, by the polling. They're getting killed in the polls. Mm-hmm. They recognize that the Republicans, if this continues, as I believe it will, Republicans just get wiped out, which will then put Trump, make it impossible for Trump to accomplish anything in his remaining 2 years in office, if he survives those remaining 2 years. And that gets us off into a whole nother discussion about, if I was counseling the Democrats, I would come in and say, hey, leave Trump alone. Do not impeach. Mm-hmm. Let him continue to be the face of the Republican Party, because the longer he's out there, the more people are going to dislike him. Because the last thing we want to do is impeach him, remove him from office, and then have J.D. Vance come in, because J.D. Vance might actually have enough common sense to play the politics of it right, that he could take what would be a sure win for the Democrats and upset that apple cart. Trump, they're doing a shakeup, because it's, Bondi's. There are problems on the military side, so we got to separate that out. From the military side, they remove those three generals. They're going to get rid of Tulsi Gabbard. I think she'll be blamed for the intelligence failure. that she didn't properly inform Trump about the dangers of going into Iran. Oh my God, talk about karma. And then Daniel Driscoll, he's the Secretary of the Army. He's actually, he seems pretty squared away. And my understanding is he is just beside himself over what Trump is doing with the Army and putting them into this kind of jeopardy. You got that, but then on the other hand, you got Kash Patel. They recognize he's a liability. I mean, good God, I never thought he would be this bad, and he's just awful. Yeah. And then this Secretary of Labor, Latina lady, she apparently is. She's got a liquor cabinet in her office and is notorious for chasing young guys around. So she's a bit of a sexual harasser, reportedly. So they're going to offload some of them. It is Trump's administration. They're trying to recalibrate because the midterms are upon them, and it's not good. By the way, I keep getting there's one of your watchers, one of your viewers is in Iran, and is forwarding me this information as we're talking. You got pictures of the Black Hawk on fire going down. He said the Black Hawks were flying over a place called Dalam. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, Dalam is in the southern part of Iran, close to the Persian Gulf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where all this activity is taking place. So this is going to, you talk about political pressure on Trump. This is going to amp it up substantially, particularly if the Iranians, if they do capture the pilots, and they're alive, and then to put them on television. Then because the mainstream media won't be able to leave that one alone. They'll be all over that, and so this is before your time. But Colonel Wilkerson and I remember what happened when the Americans were taken hostage at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, and Ted Koppel's career was born at that point. Day 1, day 2, day 3, Nightline.
I remember Mogadishu too. That wasn't very copacetic for us.
Yeah. Carl, looking at what Donald Trump said yesterday, in your opinion, what was the main objective? What was the main point in his address to the nation?
Well, I thought that maybe he was going to do what we had all recommended, that is, declare victory and leave. He started out sort of trying to do that, I think, but then he got his, as usual, he got his lips mixed up, and he did as usual, which was to say nothing, really, not to express a real mission, not to express a real goal, not to express anything about what the Iranians have very categorically said about what they would do to negotiate, not addressing any of that. And I think, just to back up for a second, I think it was at Mar-a-Lago when he said what he said about MBS, which was probably as bad a set of remarks as he's put together, and that's really saying something in this presidency, where he essentially said that MBS kissed his ass. And MBS has said nothing back in derisive nature. But that changed, I think, the entire nature of our relationship with the principal power in Southwest Asia other than Iran. And now they are making deals with Pakistan. They're making deals with Jelani in Syria. They've shifted their entire idea of they're not going to send that pipeline up through Israel. That's dead in the water. They're now making deals with Jelani and others in the different direction, if you will, to bring the pipeline up through there, which is a very important endeavor for Saudi Arabia with lots of money behind it. So Trump has made so many enemies in the world now. And look what Zelensky has just done. He has just refurbished his own position in Ukraine. Despite what the Russians might do, he has, in fact, refurbished his position, both with the world arms market and with the critical part of the world where the biggest war is going on right now, courtesy of the empire, and where Europe is increasingly disenchanted with that empire and making its own rules and making its own way in the world finally. So we're watching the whole situation change much faster than I thought it was going to. And it's being compelled to a certain extent, not just by Iran, that's a huge factor, but by Trump, all by himself and his administration. They're forcing this change to come on much more rapidly and therefore much more dangerously than it should have come on. And we're going to see that in huge proportion if he keeps up this business of not knowing what he's doing or saying what he's doing. And he allows Iran to move on to the second tier of targets that are substantially more dangerous to the global economy than that first tier. And if they hit them with the same devastating accuracy and intelligence behind their strikes that they hit that first tier, we've got a global depression. Take the thing they just did in Saudi Arabia that belonged to Amazon. That's what the kind of target I'm talking about. That was probably on the second tier of target list, and that's what's going to happen all around the region. This is going to be no respect for anybody's world capability or world hookup, and just total destruction. And if that happens, Iran's sitting there on a strait that's going to make it lots of money, continue to make it lots of money, and the rest of the world is hurting on so many different in so many different ways and on so many different issues. This could go global really quickly. It could go global really quickly.
Well, and let me just point out that an oddity about Trump, two oddities about Trump's speech. This is the first time I recall him sticking to a script and not deviating from it. I mean, he read that script and didn't do ad-libbing at all, or hardly at all. It was, is in contrast to what he normally does. The other thing was just his voice intonation and how he looked. I mean, it reminded me a little bit of Dustin Hoffman from the movie Rain Man. He was just this monotone voice throughout, without any kind of inflection or emotion, or very, very strange. So I took that as further sign that the concerns, the worries about what they're getting into here in Iran is starting to build up. And so right now in Iran it's 7 p.m., almost 7 p.m. And if we're going to do anything militarily this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised to see it start within the next 3 to 4 hours. It's Donald Trump's trying to recreate Dien Bien Phu or Gallipoli, one of the two.
Yeah.
I would predict that if we do start something, it's going to look like that Caesar Black Hawk.
Yeah.
Because right now we were talking about 1 or 2 pilots, then there are going to be a lot. And I don't know how Donald Trump would, and what could, Larry, is it going to be just the United States, in your opinion, if they go, or you're going to see other forces coming?
Yeah, no, they're not going to have any other NATO forces. I've been following on open source. There's this the X account called the Intel Frog. I don't know where they're getting the flight information, but they've been tracking since March 12th, because there was a surge starting March 12th of C-17s that were flying to these various, basically five different airfields. Joint Base Lewis McChord up in Washington, Hunter Army Airfield in Georgia, Pope Army Airfield at Fort Bragg, right next to JSOC headquarters, Oceana Naval Air Station, and basically Little Creek, Virginia, and then Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Now, there have been a total of 74 flights. Each C-17 can carry 102 paratroopers, or 102 soldiers with who are carrying a combat load. That means you got their packs and their weapons, etc. So, if you've got 74 planes with at 102, what you're looking at is, at least from the special operations community, potential deployment of around 7,500 soldiers. Yeah, I don't see any Marines in that group. So these are all Army. They, the number of trips out of Bragg, there have been 12 out of Pope Army Airfield. So that means you basically could deploy one battalion of the 82nd Airborne, and then that would leave the 2 or 3 squadrons out of Delta Force could possibly have been deployed. But my point in all this is they've been talking about 50,000 troops. No, they don't have that many. If the flights out of both Hunter Army Airfield and Joint Base Lewis McChord, those are 75th Ranger regiments, and so the 1st Battalion is, I think, at Hunter, and the 2nd Battalion is at Lewis McChord, maybe the other way around. But
no, you're right.
So you've got the Ranger regiments there. They're capable of jumping in, and they're designed to operate with the Tier 1 force, Delta Force, or SEAL Team 6. So I think they're going to do something crazy. You don't deploy those folks overseas just for show. You either, when they do that kind of deployment, it's either for an exercise, and this clearly is not an exercise, or it means they're going to actually put them in some sort of kinetic activity.
Yeah,
I've even heard, Nima, that there was a aspect of it that was involving carrying the enriched uranium out, or some other nonsense thing like that. And someone sat down and did the weight factors. Good luck carrying that.
Yeah, and I think the only they could potentially, one target could be Boucher, which is close to the coast, or if not on the coast. They could use that as a target to go in and take control of whatever nuclear fuel is there. I mean, it's ridiculous because the Russians have been working there with the Iranians, and it is a peaceful. It's not a military target, but the problem they face for the special operations forces is, if you try to go after any of the other nuclear sites that are in the interior of Iran, they don't have the legs with the helicopters to get there, without having put a forward fuel, basically a refueling station. You fly airplanes in, you dump off a bunch of fuel bladders, and then the helicopters would come in and refuel, be able to get to the target. I mean, that's just way too complicated. And Iran, we did that, good God, 46 years ago, when they tried to mount the rescue the hostages in Tehran. But Iran's come a long way in 46 years.
yeah.
Just one final comment from me before I take off. We are proving once again, and we're proving it in spades, that, as Foreign Minister Arachi said to Al Jazeera English, you cannot bomb a people into submission. No matter how many bombs you drop, no matter how accurate they are, no matter how many planes you have flying, you cannot do anything by bombing their schools, their mosques, their facilities for food, their facilities for water, on and on and on, all of which are war crimes, of course. You cannot convince them to do anything but to oppose you with the resolution of every bone in their body. And that's what we've done. Listening to Arachi, that's what he was saying. That's what he was saying. I mean, he laid it down. Ceasefire, cessation of hostile attitude, and reparations. That's my negotiation. And it'll just get rougher as time goes by. We're in a mess. We're in a total mess.